Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host and the creator of this madness, Don Kleppen. And I want to start off by thanking you for jumping on here, as well as apologizing that it's been so long since my last episode. I definitely did not intend in taking such a long gap, but regular listeners of the show will know that I got married in June. Very, very happy about that. June 11th, I married my lovely wife, Gretchen, and we went right on to our honeymoon on Maui, and we were there for 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. It was paradise. Everything you hear, or if you've been to Hawaii, you already know, but Maui was unbelievable, and I'm just so thrilled that we got a chance to have that trip. I also got a chance to try out Maui's cannabis market. I have some stories to share with you. I'll tell you kind of what that was like, my experience there, and kind of give you some tips if you find your way to the island, what you can do in terms of your cannabis use. I also wanted to mention that I really appreciate everyone who's reached out in the meantime, both for well wishes on the wedding and the honeymoon and all that. Everything's going great. Thank you. And also thank you to everybody who's reached out just asking about the show. As I said, definitely didn't intend on taking such a long gap between the Tolerance Break episode and this one that I'm recording right now, which is August 6th. It's a Sunday, kind of a gloomy, stormy Sunday here in Chicago. White caps on Lake Michigan, very choppy waters out here, gray skies and blustery wind. And that's when I decided, hey, what the heck, might as well get back on it. Been a lot going on in the cannabis space. I know that you've been paying attention. I know you've seen it. And I'm just thrilled that we have another chance to kind of get back to these conversations and talk about that. I also want to thank everyone who has, again, reached out asking about, the show, new episodes. And I want to thank everyone for leaving the ratings and reviews for the show that you have on the different podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere you see this Cannabis Man podcast. Anybody who's left a rating or a review and has expressed positivity about the show, I really can't thank you enough. This has been such a great journey, and it's amazing to me every time I get to interact with the people who have been with this podcast since the beginning, when I started it back in April of 2022. And I started it, for anyone who doesn't know, if you're new, welcome in. Thanks for coming. I started this because I'm a broadcaster in Chicago. I do news on WGN Radio, 720 AM, hey, and I do traffic on iHeartMedia in Chicago and other markets around the country. Those are my jobs. That's what pays the bills for me. And that work in news, in media, in podcasting kind of set me up with the skills to do this, and I've been a cannabis user personally for about 16 or so years now. Ever since my late teens, early 20s, it's been a regular thing for me. And I've leaned on it recreationally as well as medicinally, and that personal interest in cannabis and the knowledge that I got for myself, or at least the opinion, I suppose, which is to say that cannabis should be allowed, should be a regular, normalized part of our society. That opinion and the stigma that still lingers today over cannabis use and cannabis users, compared with the normalized substances of nicotine in cigarettes, of alcohol in different, forms that takes, in coffee, in caffeine, which I've got some of my coffee here. I love it. I'm definitely not disparaging this delicious beverage right here. However, many years ago, I came to the opinion that it is incredibly foolish, and not just foolish, but detrimental to our society at large, that we have normalized substances like alcohol, cigarettes, and caffeine as much as we have. And yet we are so insistent on the whole, here in America and in countries around the world, we're so insistent on keeping cannabis use in the shame category. We're so resistant to normalizing cannabis use. And anyone who's listened to the show before knows that there's a lot of reasons for that. Historical context, efforts by the first drug czar in the U.S., Henry Anslinger, the first FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover. There was an explicit and concerted effort to trash the brand of cannabis. And that's what happened, and that's what we're still dealing with today. And that was ultimately what led me to start this show. I wanted to be a part of changing the conversation around cannabis. Something I noticed when it became legalized here in Illinois recreationally back in 2019. I noticed that a lot of the conversations around cannabis were staying the same. And what I mean by that is there were a lot more jokes, a lot more punchlines of stoner humor and making fun of stoner culture than there was a pervasive understanding of what cannabis could offer people in terms of medical benefits. Those are the things that I think more people need to know about. The quality of life improvements that are there for people just by experimenting with cannabis. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't realize that that's an option for them. Or they think that cannabis culture, that cannabis use is one thing or many things that they deem as negative, and they don't have any knowledge of the potential positives that are there. They don't have any realization of what good cannabis can bring to their lives. And that's really what I like to talk about here on the show. I like to interview people who are in the space, whether entrepreneurs, researchers, government officials, elected officials who are making these policies, people who have studied cannabis extensively in the past. I want to talk to people who are on the front lines of this new frontier, as well as people like myself who have been in the space for years and who are just kind of watching these changes take place. I also want to, raise the alarm when we see something not great happening in this new cannabis space, this new green frontier, as people call it, because it is a new industry, several industries. This space is unexplored, untested, and the policies and the laws that are getting put in place right now, these are going to be the groundwork, the foundation for legal cannabis in the future. And so when we see states doing something that we deem incorrect, or when we see policies that are not really reflective of the equity that needs to be taken into account here, as they have talked about doing here in Illinois, Governor Pritzker making social equity front and center, part of his move to legalize cannabis. How effective that's been is debatable, and I've had that debate with many of my guests on here. Totally understand the people who argue that, what Governor Pritzker has promised in terms of equity regarding cannabis, social equity, at least from the business side of it, allowing those who have been most negatively impacted by the war on drugs to benefit from this new legalization. How effective that's been, as I say, it is debatable. But when we see whether states or countries sort of engaging in practices that are not beneficial to the industry, or when we see companies that are engaging in practices that are not good for the consumers, for us, that's the stuff I like to raise the alarm about here on the Cannabis Man podcast. And I'm really thrilled to be back at it with you and having these conversations again. And I'm going to continue back on the regular track that I was, speaking with people every week, getting a new episode out to you every week. I am back on this train, and I just wanted to let everybody who's been emailing and contacting me know, very much appreciate it. I love you all. I thank you for listening to this show, and I promise you I am back on it, and I'll be having a new episode for you every week now that I've gotten sort of past that, I don't want to say personal upheaval. It's not a negative thing, but there was just a lot of change for me in my own personal life, and it interrupted my workflow because, as I've mentioned to people too, this is a one-man podcast. Nobody else is helping me put this together. I do the editing, I do the recording, I do the interviewing, I do the social media, I do all of it. And so, I'm not going to get into the weeds, and I'm certainly not complaining about it. I love what I do here, but making a podcast, a high quality one, it requires a lot of work, and it can be time consuming, especially when it's just a one-person operation. So I thank you so much for sticking around. I thank you for bearing with me as I've, figured this out, and I've, there are going to be bumps in the road in the future too. I can promise you that, but I just really love these conversations. I love being a part of this space. It's so exciting to be in this place where we have not had this kind of change in terms of the birth of new industries, because we're taking a substance from the back alley, seedy area of society of illegal, and we're moving it into the light of legality and trying to normalize it. We haven't had this, at least not in America, since the Prohibition, when we made alcohol illegal and then brought it back into the legal side of things. We haven't seen such upheaval to the markets since then. And there's a lot that's been going on with the cannabis markets, and I'll do my best to kind of give a little wrap up of what's been going on and at least talk about what's at the forefront of the conversation regarding cannabis right now today. So without further ado, let's get into this episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Hit it! Oh, listener, it feels so good to listen to that theme again. Just want to send a shout out to my good friend Yusu Kim, aka Good Son, fantastic musician, local of the Chicago area. He's the one who put that banger of a theme together. I hope you enjoy that as much as I do. It certainly puts me in the mood to consume and discuss this great plant of cannabis that we have. I'm sitting here, as I mentioned, it's Sunday, August 6th. I'm recording this in the morning. It's about 10:30 right now, and I've got my coffee right here, as well as my cannabis. Regular listeners of the show will know that I am a huge proponent, big fan, of the combination of coffee and cannabis. It is not something that I'm able to do every day. The job that I mentioned, working at WGN Radio, some of my shifts, as well as the traffic shifts, start early in the morning. Some of my shifts start at 4 a.m., so I'll get up at 3:15, 3:30, and I'm not always able to partake in the coffee-cannabis combination that I endeavor to all the time. But when I can, oh baby, there is nothing quite like the creative energy, the space that I feel my brain gets into when the cannabis and caffeine are doing their little dance in my system. Really, really enjoy it. And if you don't have any heart issues or you don't have any health problems that would prohibit you from doing this, can't recommend it enough. Cheers. Lovely. Love it. By the way, I hope you join in when I do that, listener. When I smoke on the show, it's always an invitation. I mean it as an invitation for you to light up with me as well. I hope that if you're able to anyway, if you're doing some work or if you're doing some, any kind of task where you're listening to this, totally fine. I'm not judging one way or the other. I certainly hope people enjoy this show without the need to consume, but I definitely do that. I light up audibly for you so that you can hopefully take it as a cue to join me if that is an option for you currently. So if you can, spark up, enjoy the day. And speaking of, let me just air out the studio here a little bit just so I'm not coughing into the mic. Anyway, speaking of sparking up, what I just lit up there and inhaled and exhaled was this wonderful Simply Herb popcorn cannabis that I have been consuming of late. It was, let me look at the harvest date here. Always check your harvest date. This package, I got a pack of 14 grams of this Simply Herb animal cake popcorn. Harvest date May 30th of 2023, package June 27th, and advises use by June 27th of 2024. The potency analysis puts it at the THC average here at 26.2%. I find that my sweet spot is anywhere between 18 and about 27. This is on the higher end for me. I have mentioned in the past, listener, I have consumed consumed some of the high THC stuff that we have here in Illinois. I'm thinking of some of the joints, Margalope or Margie or something that I've gotten before. Those hover around 35, 36%. And I just don't need it that high. Same thing with alcohol. We don't need to drink 100 proof all the time. It doesn't need to be the most kick in the head kind of stuff. I tend to like it around 20%. And if they can get some CBD in there too, that's even better. This is just THC, no CBD in it, but I enjoy the taste of the animal cake, and I've really loved getting popcorn lately because mainly of the price point. Now, there's been a lot made of Illinois cannabis prices. I know that you've been seeing this as much as I have. In fact, there was a recent report which put cannabis prices in Illinois at the highest in the country. Currently, this one report says estimated anyway, 89% higher than the rest of the U.S. market. Now, this report was, it's titled A Deep Dive into the Illinois Cannabis Market. Team headset.io is the website here. It's a short read. I'm going to share it on the show's social media pages, and I have reached out to the publication here to see if somebody will come on for an interview to talk about how they studied this. They mention that, again, Illinois approved cannabis for medical use in 2013. 2019 was the adult use legalization. The 11th state overall to legalize cannabis, all things we know. Their key takeaways: with only 118 brands, Illinois has very few and high market consolidation, with 68% of sales in the state coming from the market's top 10 brands. Illinois is issuing 55 new retailer licenses to expand access to the domestic market, but this spring, the state had only about 120 licensed retailers, which is very low compared to the other U.S. states. Most of the people who have been buying cannabis in Illinois, I think, know this stuff by now inherently. We've seen it from the prices. We've talked about it on this show. There are a lot of factors which have kept Illinois cannabis prices high. And we have complained about those prices. I have said many times on the show, I have offered sales that they've been having on dispensaries. I have mentioned to you the lowest prices that I've been finding in places. I'm not somebody that loves, I try and be more frugal these days. And I'm not someone that loves to just go out and throw money on cannabis. I've thought about growing it myself, and I know that one day I am going to take that plunge and I am going to try and grow my own. As a medical card holder in the state, I have that option, and I encourage everybody to look into that for yourself. If you're able to get the card, avoid those taxes and skip the lines, which is amazing, and as well get yourself some seeds to try and grow at home. Supplement your supply so that you don't have to be spending every week, every few days, hopefully just replenishing. And the other thing is that, you can just go to the dispensaries to get special stuff. You grow your own flower. You can go to the dispensary and get, gummies or the tonics or the pre-rolls or, whatever sorts of, products you're really into as a cannabis user. You can go to the dispensaries for specialty stuff if you're able to grow your own flower. If you're not able to grow your own flower, and a lot of people are not for different reasons, and I get that, and you're completely reliant on the state market to buy from, well, some of these prices can really be a huge burden. And I have felt that myself, and I completely understand it. And it's why I've been telling everyone through the show here, as well as, whenever I talk to people, to just bear with it, because the prices were not going to stay high. They never were. Competition was going to enter the market and going to bring prices down, and we are already seeing that. And this is a long-winded way of getting back to the Simply Herb animal cake popcorn that I bought here that I was just smoking on. Popcorn is a great way of getting the same flower, and it's just smaller buds. They basically take it from a different part of the plant, but the percentages in terms of THC and CBD, they're the same. The terpenes are the same. You're just looking at popcorn because it's smaller buds of cannabis rather than the large buds of flower. We've all seen those, massive nugs that can weigh up to a quarter ounce on their own. I'm not talking about those Christmas trees. Popcorn is basically these tiny little nuggets, but it's the same flower, same plant, same taste, same percentages, all of it. Look, if you're not already doing it, Look for popcorn at your dispensaries, and you can usually find better deals on those than straight flower. Shake is sort of a different thing where it's just totally ground up. I'm not a big fan of buying that off dispensaries. I find it oftentimes to be a little dried out by the time I get it. Your mileage may vary. Experience might be different where you are. You may have bought shake that you really loved. Hey, to each their own. That's the beauty of the products of the dispensaries and all of that. The other thing I want to mention is that this Simply Herb brand, and look for it at your Illinois dispensary. But what I love about this is that I got this half ounce, 14 grams. I got this half ounce container, not on sale. This was the base price, $90. $90. Now, I know there are some of you out there who are saying, man, that's still too much. I get that. The last time that I purchased cannabis on the black market, the last time I did that, I paid $160 for an ounce. $90 for half puts it at $180 for a full ounce. And as I said, this was not on sale. I have seen Simply Herb products go on sale. So they sell for less than that base price of $90 for the half. To me, because this is my experience, this is anecdotal. Take it for what it's worth, which might be nothing. But I'm giving you my anecdotal experience. This $90 puts it at $180 for the ounce, which is $20 above what I paid on the black market. And that was from a very close connection of mine and high quality stuff who I've bought from a long, long time ago. So if this non-sale priced item at an Illinois dispensary has a floor, or I guess a ceiling, I should say, has a ceiling of $90 for the half an ounce, we are very, very close, knocking right on the door of the equilibrium, the singularity, if you will, the point in time that I've mentioned on the show before where black market prices and white market prices, the legal side of things, are uniform. They're even, universally equal. And when that happens, you watch the money that goes into legal cannabis in Illinois, because there is a reason that Illinois competition and brands have remained low. And that's because of the lawsuits that were highlighting the specialized groups who were being elevated to give an opportunity for the social equity component of business owners who were getting money to help start up these companies. Now, I know that there are a lot of other problems and that some of these people who have applied for the lottery, they put money down and they didn't get that money back and they didn't win the lottery. And I know that there are a lot of problems with Illinois' cannabis market, but I'm just talking about prices and competition here. For the first 3 years of Illinois' legal cannabis market, the majority of those who had applied for licenses for the cannabis market, their applications, their licenses were tied up in the lawsuits. They were tied up in court. So for a long time, for those 3 years, we only had the big three. And the big three companies that I'm talking about are Cresco Labs, are Verano, and GTI, Green Thumb Industries. Those are the majority of the dispensaries that you've seen in Illinois marketplaces for the length of time that it's been legal here. But that is changing, and that's because the lawsuits have ended, the legal tie-ups have been resolved, and now these companies are getting up and running. Not all of them, but many of them are starting to enter the marketplace. And those additions, that competition, is forcing prices downward. We're not even 5 years into this thing. Next year we will be. 5 years into this. And we are fast approaching the point when black market prices are the same as what you can get from the dispensary in Illinois. And I also want to bring up, because I know that there are those of you out there who are pointing to other states like Michigan, like New Jersey, like Colorado or Oregon, the list goes on. I know that there are many of you out there who might be saying, hey, those states have been cheaper for a long time. Why can I buy 4 times as much in Michigan than I can in Illinois for the same money? I would direct you to the first episode of this podcast, the pilot episode, where I spoke with Matt Ross of Bedford Grow and Deep Space Creations. Matt Ross came from Colorado, started his cannabis journey there, and has been here in Illinois. And something Matt Ross said has always stuck with me, and I've tried to mention on the show whenever this topic comes up. When you open up the market the way that Michigan and Colorado and some other states did, meaning when you allowed anybody to apply for a license, to open a dispensary, to start making cannabis products, what happens is the market gets flooded, prices hit rock bottom, but then shortly after that, when all the buyers, and I'm one of them who celebrates these, but when everyone's celebrating the rock bottom prices, there's something else happening behind the scenes, which is that the businesses are seeing that the profit margins are tanking. And all of a sudden, they have no incentive to make good products because they're not making enough money, because they have to charge so little so that you'll buy their stuff over their competitors. And so now their incentive goes to, hey, let's fill the store shelves with whatever we can get out, rock bottom prices, and whoever buys them, that's going to be what we make. That's going to be our income. That'll be what we break in. So what ends up happening after that is that the quality of the cannabis products in that state go down. It's not just that the prices go down, the quality of the product then follows it shortly after. And you only have to look at Colorado and Oregon to see the truth of this. And I promise you, Michigan is heading there. Inside the next 10 years, already I've heard from people who say that the quality of what they've gotten in Michigan is not what's here in Illinois. And that ultimately, again, long-winded way of getting back to what Matt Ross said. There's quality cannabis here in Illinois. The quality is what we have to fight to preserve. I know that it might hurt to spend the money for cannabis at dispensaries, especially, as I said, when you need to rely on it week after week after week. But all I've asked on this podcast of you is to just be patient, because it was never going to stay this way forever. What we've been trying to do is preserve the quality of the cannabis products. The prices will go down, but what matters is we can still buy high quality stuff for lower and lower prices. There is a sweet spot in the economics of this legal cannabis business. And the states that threw their doors open and allowed anybody to get into the cultivation side and the dispensary side, when they flooded the market with these products, the prices tanked and the quality tanked soon after. And that is not an individual or subjective path. That is basic economics. And that's going to happen to any state that runs their market that way. Now, on the flip side, it may not ultimately end up mattering what each state has done with their individual market, because once the federal status of cannabis changes, and by the way, very exciting stuff on that front, there's been talk of renewed interest in safe banking. Chuck Schumer was saying that once Congress comes back from their summer recess in September, he's hoping for renewed push for that. And there's even talk of the Health and Human Services Secretary actually putting together a plan and a timeline for rescheduling cannabis, moving it away down from a Schedule I drug, which is what is so restrictive about this. It's that status that says something's highly addictive with no medical value. It's been wrong for a long time, from the beginning, if you like, that cannabis has been put in that category. But now we're actually hearing, and not just, from blogs or enthusiasts like myself, that this might be happening. We're hearing from the people in the Biden administration. We're hearing from people on Capitol Hill who have the power to do something about it. They're talking about actually making a timeline and actually looking into rescheduling or, again, fingers crossed, ultimately descheduling cannabis. And when that happens, there'll be a federal reimagining of what the cannabis market looks like. They may end up, I suspect they will take a blueprint from one state or multiples and try and find a combination that fits. But when the federal cannabis market is allowed, when it's legalized, when cannabis is descheduled, there will be a federal umbrella system for testing, for sales, for state laws. And when that happens, the different states are going to fall in line with what the federal government does if they're not already doing what they choose to do, the federal government chooses to do. So what I mean to say is, if the federal government ends up taking a cue from Illinois or Minnesota, which just became the 23rd state to recreationally legalize cannabis, well done. Well done, Minnesota. Welcome to the Midwest happy place. I am so thrilled for my brethren in Wisconsin, in Iowa, in Montana and Idaho, the Dakotas, these places that are near to Minnesota, closer to Minnesota than Illinois. Now you've got some options too. And so I realize I'm on a bit of a soapbox here. I apologize for that. I will get to the news joint wrap. I guess I just wanted to make this point. Illinois still holds some of the highest prices in the country, but I and others have seen from our own experience that these prices have been and continue to drop. They are coming down. And that's not going to stop as more and more businesses are entering this market. Illinois prices are going to come down, but the key distinction here, and I want you to bring this up the next time somebody starts casting aspersions at Illinois' cannabis market and the prices here. The next time you hear somebody talk about that, I want you to bring up quality. Because the quality of these cannabis products, that's the real thing. That's the fight. I know that you're like me in that if you got a great deal on some cannabis product, if you got a pack of 20 pre-rolls for $10, if you got an ounce of cannabis, of flower, not shake, not popcorn, but if you got an ounce of flower for $50, right? You pay $50, you got an ounce, you are loving life. And you get home and you light that up and it tastes like something that you swept under the rug. It tastes like something that came out of your vehicle's exhaust pipe, right? How good are you going to feel about that deal then? That $50 for that ounce is still too much because it's garbage. That's the point I'm trying to make. Low prices don't mean a thing if what you're buying is crap. A good deal ceases to become a good deal when the quality of the product is crap. So that's what I endeavor to try and communicate to people here. The quality of the cannabis needs to stay high and let the prices fall as competition unfolds. Be patient because these prices are dropping. And like I said, just last week when I made this purchase of this Simply Herb, with which I am not affiliated, by the way. I'm getting no kickbacks for this, but I'm just telling you that I've been buying this because it is so close to exactly what I was paying on the black market. But the key difference here is that I get to look at the label and see when it was harvested, when it was packaged, what the THC percentage is, what the terpenes are. It's a real, legal 2023 market. And if I don't want this, I can buy something else. That's the beauty of the legal dispensaries. You've got options. It is a marketplace. You're not stuck with whatever your dealer has. Now, maybe this is an antiquated debate. Maybe you listening haven't gone on the black market forever. I applaud you for that. Good for you. That more people should be like that. There you go. That's for you. That's for you. Let's just fade it down now. That's for you, though. Applause for staying on the white market, for staying in the, above board, for buying legal, because you are eating the extra expense and you are, if you're like me, you had a connect who would deliver to you. I have got to go to the dispensary physically and make this trip, although delivery's coming too. Believe that. Delivery will come for cannabis in Illinois in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm sure of it. But for now, we have to make the effort to go, and we have to deal with the prices. But the prices are changing, and everything else is a win for us, the consumer. The variety, the quality, the options, everything else is a win, and the prices are slowly getting to the point where those are going to be a win too. Now let's continue and get into the News Joint Wrap. That's right, this is the part of the show where I wrap up some industry events, some cannabis events coming up, as well as read you some headlines from some news related to cannabis in and around Illinois. And it's all brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And let's start with Illinois setting a monthly sales record for cannabis yet again. Jason Brown of Illinois News Joint writing Illinois' Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. He posted this August 3rd, by the way. You can head to IllinoisNewsJoint.com to see any of these stories I mentioned. But this is the second straight month that Illinois set a new monthly sales record for this year. The totals for July reaching $140,048,722. And the in-state resident sales and total items for July set all-time records for Illinois. In-state resident sales were $104,256,118, and that outperforms the December totals from last year of $102,460,209. The dispensaries sold a little over 3.5 million total items last month, and that was better than June. And the figures, by the way, do not include taxes collected. And again, this is another part of the whole equation with these legal markets. Taxes are a big part of whether or not states are going to continue to do these things. And so Illinois raking in more tax money, it's good for all of us. And if you're interested in seeing other month sales totals, you can check that article out at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Governor Pritzker, second story here, signs a supervised release bill. On Friday, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed Senate Bill 423. It implements mandatory supervised release reforms, including amending the Drug Paraphernalia Control Act. A press release says the legislation, which goes into effect January 1st of next year, will promote public safety and community success by implementing criminal justice reforms. Also going on to say that it supports the reintegration of individuals into the community while lowering the possibility of recidivism, increasing public safety, and lowering taxpayer costs. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, state and local officials, advocates, along with artist and activist Meek Mill, who's been a proponent for criminal justice reform for a long time. They were all with the governor as these announcements were made. Some bullet points highlighted from this bill from Jason Brown include improving education credits that incentivize people on parole or mandatory supervised release to obtain a degree, career certificate, or vocational tech certificate. It also streamlines early termination processes, increasing government transparency by standardizing review timelines, encouraging officers to recommend early termination for people who have a track record of success, and providing clear feedback for those denied. Tailoring supervision to an individualized approach to each person's unique circumstances. So a subjective sort of pathway here. Focusing on addressing root causes of crime and enhancing public safety. Also limiting unnecessary drug testing, saving resources, and reducing work interruptions. And finally, expanding virtual reporting permanently for remote check-ins for all forms of supervision in Illinois, reducing disruption to work or childcare responsibilities, and removing barriers to success. You can find out more about that as well on IllinoisNewsJoint.com. And one final news story for you here. Cresco Labs and Columbia Care's merger has been terminated. Another story from the end of July from Jason Brown here. In March of 2022, Chicago-based cannabis company Cresco Labs announced a proposed acquisition of top multi-state cannabis operator Columbia Care. On July 31st, Cresco Labs and Columbia Care announced a mutual agreement to terminate the $2 billion merger agreement. Additionally, the definitive agreements dated November 4, 2022 to divest certain New York, Illinois, and Massachusetts assets of Cresco and Columbia Care to an entity owned and controlled by Sean Diddy Combs have also been terminated, effective July 28th, 2023. So that means that Diddy's entry into the Illinois cannabis market through this merger of Cresco and Columbia, that is also no longer happening. So just kind of an interesting thing. There's some quotes in the article here, some more information if you're interested. Again, you can find out more about all the stories that I mentioned, as well as some events coming up related to cannabis in and around Illinois. All of that at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Just a few more things here before I let you go, listener. I wanted to mention that my time on Maui was just unbelievable. I mean, I've struggled to put it into words ever since we got back. You know, people have asked, and it's hard to describe. Paradise is just the word that keeps coming up. It's everything that we hoped it would be and so much more. And I can't recommend it highly enough. We were, again, not affiliated here, but we were staying at the Wailea Beach Resort, which is right near, it's just off of Wailea Beach, which is on the south side of the island and the west coast. And it was just, we lived at that resort for 2 weeks. And if you have the chance, I just can't recommend it enough. There are other resorts that are on Wailea Beach there. There's the Waldorf Astoria. There's the Four Seasons. There are a few resorts that are right near that Wailea Beach. And I just, again, if you have the chance, it was a life-changing trip for us. And I just can't recommend it highly enough. It was relaxing just to be by the beach and the pool every day, as well as getting to snorkel with some sea turtles and, taking tours up to their mountain, Haleakala. We saw the sunrise up there. And I brought a little vape pen with me, so I got to, get a little high at 10,000 feet, which was fantastic. And just seeing the clouds below you, being up there at that height, the clouds were below us, kind of running over the peaks, looking a little bit like waves, looking a little like water. And then you see that first light. You see the colors change in the night sky, even seeing the stars before the sun came up. It was amazing because the elevation, the altitude that you're at is so high, you don't have any light pollution, you don't have any cloud cover. So we just saw, it was like we were sitting in a giant snow globe, and you could see the curvature of the sky with all the stars around. We saw the space station kind of move slowly across the sky. Looked like another star, but it was just like a slowly moving one. And so that was absolutely wonderful. And I found out that Maui's cannabis market is a lot stricter than it is here in Illinois and any of the other legal states I've been to, California as well. It was very restrictive, and it's only medically legal there. So what I had to do was I had to register in their government portal, and I had to basically register as an out-of-state medical patient. I had to use my Illinois medical card. I had to pay $50 and then basically got a Hawaii medical card for the 2 weeks that we were there. That allowed me to go to places like Pono Life, Maui. I got some Alien OG, an eighth of that. I got a little Oreo-themed grinder. It looks like a little Oreo cookie, so I ground up some of that. I also went to Maui Grown Therapies, and I got some Super Lemon Haze. That was wonderful. THC was around 20%. Terpenes were, limonene was the heavy one. It was very fruity. And by purchasing for the first time at this Maui Grown Therapies, they also included a gram of keef. And it just came on its own in this little glass jar. I've never gotten keef before, but I was able to sprinkle that in the grinder, and I included it in my rolled joints, and it just obviously made an already life-changing trip more special. Just being able to, at the resort on the balcony at the end of the day, light up before dinner, at the luau we went to, just at different points, being able to light up the joint, to not have to, we were there for 2 weeks, and it was such a great time. I just didn't want to be without the cannabis. And so even having to jump through those hoops and having to, as I said, spend a little money and register and all that, it made it so worth it for me to be able to have that as part of the trip. It was wonderful, and Gretchen was so helpful during all of it, getting, even coming with me several times to this place at the Wailea Gateway, this shopping center that was near the resort. There's this wonderful shop there, Maui CBD Prime. And I went there. It was the first place that we saw near the resort on Google when we were searching for places to go when we arrived that first day. And so we went there, got a shuttle from the resort, which was really nice. And then we go in, and this wonderful lady, Aunt Cheyenne, greets us. And she had all these great products. She had these, it was all CBD stuff. So it was all under the THC threshold, that 0.03 or whatever that threshold is from the Farm Bill. It's all hemp-based stuff. So I got some flour, we got some drinks and some gummies, as well as the joint wraps that I mentioned, and that grinder. Was able to get all of that from Maui CBD Prime, and I got some CBD flour to include with the THC that I got from another shop. Didn't need to use my medical card at CBD Prime either. Aunt Cheyenne made that very clear. Again, it was all hemp-based stuff, but I went back there 3 or 4 times, and I got the vape pens that I was mentioning to you. She had a blood orange flavor, which was one of them, and then it was a mimosa was the other one. And they were just great. One was kind of a little more of an indica, one was a little more sativa, and so I was able to utilize those pens throughout the trip as well. And so I just wanted to send a shout out if you are on the island of Maui, if you get there, and if you're in that vicinity, if you get to that Wailea Gateway, those shops, check out Maui CBD Prime and tell Aunt Cheyenne that Don Kleppen says hello. And believe me, you will not regret it. It made our trip more special. And there's another seafood place in there, Oh Wow, OAO. And they expanded from a food truck. Some of the best sushi and oysters that Gretchen and I have ever had. We had a lot of great seafood, obviously, on the trip. The island is just teeming with great options of seafood. Mama's Fish House was another place we went to on the north side. Really can't recommend that enough. It's a kind of place where like the reservations fill up several months in advance. So if you can get a reservation there, great. But Gretchen and I did not have one. We went there on the recommendation of somebody about 11:30 in the morning after they opened, and we sat at the bar and we were able to get a seat there without a reservation. And they print their menus every day to reflect the fresh catches that they have there every single day. They even print the names of the fishermen who catch this stuff on there. Some accountability that I thought was pretty hilarious. But yeah, it's quality unlike I've ever tried. Both in the cannabis and the seafood, both were very, very high quality. And so I just can't recommend that enough. I know that I expect them to move in the recreational direction at some point. I know that there's a lot of effort underway to get Hawaii in general a little more self-reliant. They've had to import so many goods for so long that there's this government money trying to get them a little more self-reliant. They're also trying to get some lands protected. So I think they basically have some bigger fish to fry, no pun intended, currently. But I know that recreational cannabis will get there eventually, just like it has for 23 states now across the U.S. And this train's going to keep on rolling, and I'm excited to be on board. I'm telling you, this is a great time to be alive and a great time to be a cannabis enthusiast, and I'm so glad to be talking with you about that, and I will continue to do so. I'll be back again next week with another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.